You got the promotion. The email is right there, congratulating you by name. And within about 10 seconds, your first real thought is, they're going to figure out I don't actually know what I'm doing. That's strange, isn't it? You did the work. You earned the result. And somehow the evidence in front of you isn't enough to convince the part of your brain that keeps insisting you got lucky. Here's the reframe. That feeling isn't a reliable measurement of your competence. It's a pattern in how your brain assigns credit and blame, and for a lot of people, that pattern is quietly rigged against them. Martin Seligman, who researched what he called explanatory style, found that people tend to interpret good and bad outcomes using very different templates. Some people explain failure as temporary and specific, this one thing went wrong, and success as something stable and personal, I'm generally capable. Other people run the exact opposite pattern. They treat failure as evidence of something permanent and deeply personal, I'm not cut out for this. While explaining away success as temporary and external, that was a lucky project, an easy client, good timing. If you recognize that second pattern in yourself, you're not imagining things. You're running a specific, well-documented style of attribution, and it applies unevenly to your own life by design. Think about what this actually does over time. Every difficult moment gets filed under who you are. Every successful moment gets filed under circumstances outside you. That means your internal record of your own ability is built almost entirely from failures and nearly excludes your successes as evidence. No wonder the promotion doesn't feel like proof. Your brain never let it count as proof in the first place. Albert Bandura, who studied what he called self-efficacy, the belief in your own ability to handle a task, found that this belief is built primarily through direct mastery experiences, actually doing something and registering that you did it. But registering requires attribution. If you complete a hard project and immediately credit the deadline, your teammates, or luck, you've technically had the experience, but you've blocked it from updating your underlying sense of competence. You get the outcome without getting the evidence, which means you can rack up real, external proof of ability for years while your internal sense of ability stays exactly where it started. Think about how this shows up in an ordinary week. You give a presentation that goes well, and your first thought is that the audience was just being kind. You solve a problem at work that others were stuck on, and you assume it was obvious, or that anyone would have gotten there eventually. Someone compliments your work directly, and you find yourself explaining almost immediately why it wasn't actually that impressive. None of these moments feel like conscious decisions. They feel like simply being accurate, humble, realistic. But notice that the same instinct rarely runs in reverse when something goes wrong. Mistakes don't get explained away nearly as generously. There's a social reinforcement layer here too. When you deflect a compliment out loud, saying it was nothing, or crediting luck, people around you often respond warmly to that modesty. They nod, they relax. The moment feels smoother. That warm response quietly rewards the deflection, the same way research on reinforcement would predict, even though no one in the room intended to teach you anything. Over time, deflecting your own success becomes not just an internal habit, but a socially reinforced performance, one that keeps getting approval precisely because it looks humble. The behavior gets stronger, while the actual belief underneath it, that you didn't really earn this, never gets challenged. Leon Festinger's research on social comparison adds another layer here. People evaluate their own abilities largely by comparing themselves to others. And modern workplaces and social platforms have made that comparison nearly constant. You see a colleague's polished final presentation, but not the 4 drafts before it. You see someone's confident answer in a meeting, but not the uncertainty they felt walking in. Everyone else's competence looks effortless from the outside, because you're only ever comparing your visible struggle to everyone else's invisible one. That comparison isn't fair, but it's the only version most people ever get to run. Here's the counterintuitive part. Imposter feelings often get worse, not better, as people become more genuinely skilled. Early on, when you know very little about a subject, you also don't know enough to see how much you don't know. As competence grows, so does your awareness of the field's full complexity, all the nuance, edge cases, and expert-level distinctions you still haven't mastered. That expanding awareness can feel like proof you're falling behind, when it's actually a normal, almost universal signature of increasing expertise. The discomfort isn't a sign you don't belong, it's often a side effect of understanding the subject well enough to see how much more there is. This creates a strange trap for high performers specifically. The more accomplished you become, the higher the bar you unconsciously set for what would count as real evidence of competence. Early wins get dismissed as beginner's luck. Later wins get dismissed as expected, since you're supposedly experienced now. There's rarely a point where the bar stays still long enough for a success to actually clear it, which means the feeling of being found out can persist at every single level, from your first job to a role you've held for a decade. Modern work culture adds its own pressure here. Professional platforms are full of confident, polished self-presentation, career updates, achievements, and announcements, almost never paired with the uncertainty behind them. Scrolling through a feed of other people's highlight reels while sitting inside your own unedited, uncertain experience creates a comparison that was never balanced to begin with. It's not that everyone else has resolved the self-doubt you're feeling, it's that self-doubt is rarely something people post about. This is not a sign of low ability, and it doesn't mean you're secretly unqualified. For many people, this pattern was shaped early, in environments where achievement was expected rather than celebrated, where success simply met the bar rather than exceeding it, and where failure drew far more attention than accomplishment ever did. The attribution habit made sense as a response to that environment. It just hasn't updated to reflect the fact that you're allowed to actually count your wins now. None of this means you need to suddenly believe you're flawless or that every doubt you feel is automatically wrong. Some caution is genuinely useful. The goal isn't to erase self-doubt completely, it's to notice the specific moment your brain files a success under luck or circumstance, and gently ask whether a failure in that same situation would have been filed the same way. If the answer is no, if you'd absolutely count the failure as evidence about yourself, then fairness alone suggests the success deserves the same treatment. Try this test the next time the doubt shows up. Imagine a close friend, someone you respect, achieved the exact same result under the exact same circumstances. Would you tell them it was luck, or would you tell them they earned it? Most people answer that question generously for a friend and harshly for themselves, using two different standards to judge identical evidence. That gap is worth noticing, not because you should suddenly believe every good thing about yourself unconditionally, but because a standard that only applies to one person in the room was never really about fairness in the first place. So the next time you accomplish something real, and the first sentence your mind reaches for is an explanation for why it doesn't actually count, pause on that exact sentence. It's not modesty, and it's not accuracy. It's an old accounting system, one that's been quietly writing off your evidence for years. And the next time it tries to close the books early, you get to ask for a second look.